October 22nd, 2006, Santiago Bernabeu, 80,000 people. On the pitch, the world's most expensive team, Real Madrid, with Fabio Cannavaro and Roberto Carlos, is widely regarded as the greatest left-back who ever lived. He would face a small kid from Argentina wearing the number 19 shirt who lived in the shadow of Ronaldinho. The teenager wouldn't score that night, but by the end of the game, he would end the careers of the world's most feared defenders. Before you see what a teenager did to these two men, you need to understand exactly who they were in October 2006. Not just good defenders, not just experienced veterans. These were the two most decorated defenders on the planet, and both were operating at the absolute peak of their powers. Start with Cannavaro. 4 months before this match, he walked into the 2006 World Cup in Germany as Italy's captain and walked out carrying the trophy. 7 games, 2 goals conceded across the entire tournament, neither from open play. 1 was an own goal, the other was a penalty. 71 clearances, 42 interceptions, 83% of his duels won. In the semi-final against the host nation, he delivered a performance so flawless, every pass completed. 9 major defensive interventions that German fans applauded him off the pitch. They called him Il Muro di Berlino, the Berlin Wall. He stood 5 feet 9 inches. Centre-backs half a foot taller couldn't out-jump him. Strikers who outweighed him by 20 pounds couldn't out-muscle him. He didn't defend with size or speed, he defended with timing, positioning, and a footballing brain that processed danger before it arrived. In fact, 1 month after this match, on November 27, 2006, Cannavaro would be awarded the Ballon d'Or, the best player in the world. Only the 3rd defender in history to win it, after Beckenbauer and Sammer. No defender has won it since. The man standing in the center of Real Madrid's defense on the night of October 22, 2006, was by every measurable standard the single best defender alive. But he wasn't alone on that left side, and the man beside him had his own collection of trophies that most footballers couldn't accumulate across 3 careers. Roberto Carlos arrived at Real Madrid in 1996 and never left. 11 seasons, 584 appearances, 3 Champions League titles, 4 La Liga titles, a 2002 World Cup winners' medal with Brazil, runner-up for the Ballon d'Or himself, runner-up for FIFA World Player of the Year. He was described by the New York Times as the most offensive-minded left-back in the history of the game. His free kick against France in 1997, the one that bent in a way physics shouldn't allow, is still replayed 3 decades later. He wasn't just a defender, he was an event. Every time he surged forward, stadiums held their breath. Together, Cannavaro and Roberto Carlos represented something specific: the old world of defending. Experience, authority, reputation. 2 men who had faced every elite attacker of the previous decade: Ronaldo, Henry, Zidane, Shevchenko, and survived them all. 2 World Cup winners, a Ballon d'Or between them, a combined 1,000+ professional appearances. This was the left side of Real Madrid's defense. This was where Barcelona's right winger would have to operate for 90 minutes. That right winger was a 19-year-old from Rosario, Argentina. He wore the number 19 shirt, not even the 10 yet, that still belonged to Ronaldinho. He'd played 1 El Clasico before, a 3-0 Barcelona win the previous season, where he'd impressed but hadn't scored. He was widely considered the most talented teenager in world football, but still widely considered Ronaldinho's understudy. He had never scored against Real Madrid. He had never scored in a match of this magnitude, and he was about to walk into 80,000 hostile fans at the Santiago Bernabeu and face the reigning World Cup winning captain and the greatest left-back in history at the same time on their pitch. Most 19-year-olds in that situation play safe, stay wide, pick their moments, respect the occasion, and respect the opponent standing in front of them. Messi didn't respect anything. What happened over the next 90 minutes left the greatest left-back alive, questioning everything he thought he knew about defending. Fabio Capello's Real Madrid were the best in the world. Cannavaro and Helguera in the centre, Roberto Carlos at left-back, Sergio Ramos on the right, Emerson sitting in front of the back 4 like a guard dog, Mahamadou Diarra beside him. This was a defense built on structure, discipline, and the understanding that nobody, absolutely nobody, was getting through the middle without paying a price. Barcelona's approach was different. Frank Rijkaard set up with Ronaldinho floating behind Messi, with Xavi and Deco controlling the midfield, and Iniesta drifting between the lines. The idea was simple: get the ball to the front two and let them create. But 2 minutes, that's all it took for the Bernabeu to believe this would be a comfortable night. Raúl met a cross with his head and put it past Victor Valdés. 1-0, Real Madrid. The stadium erupted. Capello's plan was already working. Score early, sit deep, suffocate the space, and let Barcelona chase the game. And for the next 15 minutes, that's exactly what happened. Messi was quiet. Every time he received the ball on the right side, a white shirt was already there. Roberto Carlos stayed compact, didn't give him a yard to turn. Emerson drifted across to double up whenever Messi moved inside. The teenager was being handled firmly, professionally, the way elite defenders handle talented young players who haven't yet learned the rhythm of the biggest stages. Real Madrid were a goal up, controlling the game, and the 19-year-old everyone had come to watch was doing more defending than attacking. If you'd turned the television off at the 15-minute mark, you would have assumed Cannavaro and Roberto Carlos had done their homework. You would have been wrong. Because somewhere around the midpoint of the first half, something changed. Not in the tactics, not in the formation, in Messi. It started with the move everyone would talk about first. Messi received the ball on the right side, facing Roberto Carlos one-on-one. He showed the outside the standard move, the safe move, the one Roberto Carlos had defended 1,000 times. The Brazilian shifted his weight to cover the line, and then Messi cut inside, instantly. A shift so sudden that Roberto Carlos's body couldn't follow. The Brazilian's legs staggered, one step forward, one step sideways, as if the signal between his brain and his feet had been scrambled. He lost his balance completely and went down. Roberto Carlos hit the grass. By the time he scrambled back to his feet, Messi was 10 yards past him, driving forward with the ball, and the Brazilian was chasing a ghost. But chasing was all he could do now. Carlos sprinted after him. Diarra came across to cover. Another white shirt closed in from the right. The entire right flank of Real Madrid's defense collapsed toward the teenager, like gravity pulling everything into one spot, and none of it mattered. Messi kept the ball, kept moving, kept finding the extra half yard of space that shouldn't have existed between 3-4 converging defenders. He was untouchable, not because he was faster than all of them, but because he changed direction before any of them could change theirs. And then came the moment that silenced the Bernabeu. With Roberto Carlos recovering behind him and Cannavaro stepping across from the center to close the door, Messi found himself facing both of them at once. The fullback behind, the Ballon d'Or winner ahead. No space, no angle, no way through. Messi went straight between them, one shift of the ball, through the gap that both defenders had spent their entire careers making sure never opened, and suddenly he was in the box. Through, clean, both men behind him, turning, beaten. Barcelona came inches from equalising. The chance that followed should have been buried. It wasn't, but the goal didn't matter. What mattered was the sequence that created it. A 19-year-old had put Roberto Carlos on the floor, outrun his recovery, shrugged off 3 covering defenders, and then slipped between the greatest left-back alive and the reigning best player on earth, as if they were training cones. The Bernabeu had gone quiet. This was still the home of Real Madrid, and they were still winning. But the noise had changed. The comfort was gone. Something was happening on that right side of the pitch that nobody in this stadium had seen before. And the most unsettling part, Messi didn't look like he was trying. He didn't look like a teenager summoning everything he had for one brilliant moment. He looked calm, unhurried, as if this was simply what he did, and everything before had just been him waiting to start. Real Madrid's defenders had a choice: keep trying to stop him with positioning and structure, which had just failed spectacularly, or resort to the only tool left when skill and experience aren't enough: force. Roberto Carlos chose force, and what happened next would stay with him for the rest of his life, not as a memory, but as a permanent mark on his body. Even before the first half was over, Real Madrid had stopped trying to outplay Messi. They were trying to survive him. Every time he touched the ball, there was real danger, either from what Messi was about to do to them, or from what they were about to do to Messi. The fouls started piling up. Midfielders hacking at his ankles, Roberto Carlos grabbing whatever he could reach. Emerson earned a yellow card for a challenge so late it looked like a separate incident. The apology to the referee didn't fool anyone. It was the desperate act of a man who had no other way to stop what was happening. The Bernabeu was watching something it hadn't seen before, a 19-year-old who was not just surviving the physicality of El Clasico, but inviting it. Every time they knocked him down, he got up and asked for the ball again, not with anger, with calm. The calm of someone who knows that fouling him only delays the inevitable, and the fouling couldn't last forever, because sooner or later, one of those fouls would cost Roberto Carlos something permanent. The second half began, and Messi picked up exactly where he'd left off, demanding the ball on the right, driving at defenders, finding pockets of space that Real Madrid's structure was supposed to eliminate. In one sequence that defied everything the Bernabeu thought it understood about football, Messi collected the ball deep and ran directly into the heart of the Madrid defense. One challenge, he skipped past it. Another, gone. A third, beaten. Messi kept going, body after body, lunge after lunge, skipping away from challenge after challenge, until eventually they brought him down in front of the box. 7 challenges, 7 defeated defenders in one continuous, insane run. The free kick came to nothing, but the image lingered, a teenager dragging the ball through the entire midfield and defense of one of the biggest clubs in the world. And the only way to stop him was to foul him collectively. Messi wasn't done. He laid the ball off to Good Johnson in a dangerous position, but the Icelander couldn't finish. He combined with Ronaldinho, the two of them exchanging passes, probing, trying to unpick the lock that Madrid kept slamming shut. Everything Barcelona created flowed through Messi. Every dangerous moment had his fingerprints on it, but the players he was feeding couldn't convert. And then, on a rare moment when Barcelona switched off, Madrid punished them. A counter-attack, quick, clinical. The ball found Van Nistelrooy, and the Dutchman hammered it home, 2-0 Real Madrid. The scoreboard now read Madrid in complete control, but the truth on the pitch was something else entirely. The best player in the stadium was 19 years old, wearing Barcelona's colours, and hadn't stopped running at defenders since the 20th minute. Messi took the ball again, this time combining with Ronaldinho, quick passes, 1-2s, the two artists trying everything to drag Barcelona back into the match. The football was relentless, chance after chance built and wasted. Barcelona's finishing was failing the teenager who was creating it all. Then Saviola, who had come on as a substitute, burst through and slipped Messi in behind the Madrid defense, clean through on goal. One-on-one with Casillas, the chance to make the scoreboard match the reality of what had been happening all night. Messi struck it. The ball flew just past the post, side netting. He should have scored. On another night, with another inch, the story of this match would be told differently. But the miss didn't change the truth of what everyone inside the Bernabeu had witnessed. A teenager who had been the most dangerous player on the pitch for 70 minutes against two of the greatest defenders alive. And there was still the matter of Roberto Carlos's finger. It happened in a moment that captured the entire night in one image. Messi on the ball, cutting inside, the same move that had been destroying Roberto Carlos all match. This time, the Brazilian didn't try to follow with his feet. He knew where that ended. He reached out and grabbed Messi's shirt, a fistful of fabric, the last resort of a defender who has exhausted every other option. Messi accelerated anyway. Roberto Carlos's finger caught in the shirt and bent the wrong way. Years later, on the OB1 podcast, Roberto Carlos held up his hand and told the story. "Look at my finger, it was because of Messi. I grabbed him by the shirt right here and he went, my goodness, Messi broke my finger. He was so good and so fast. He'd fake going on the outside and then cut inside. I still have the memory of him on my hand." He called it a souvenir, a broken finger, permanent. Physical evidence that one of the greatest defenders in history tried to stop a teenager with his hands, because his feet, his brain, his 11 seasons at the Bernabeu, and a World Cup winner's medal weren't enough. And then Emerson went further. Later in the match, he stamped on Messi's ankle. It should have been a second yellow, a red card. The referee waved it away. Messi suffered an ankle sprain that kept him out of the next match. The only way Real Madrid could finally stop Messi was to injure him, and even that only kept him quiet for one game. The final whistle blew. Real Madrid 2, Barcelona 0. Messi, 0 goals, 0 assists, a defeat, an ankle sprain, and a quiet walk down the tunnel. And yet every major Spanish newspaper named him the best player on the pitch. But the most important thing that happened that night didn't happen on the grass or in the press box. It happened in the tunnel, when Roberto Carlos turned to the man walking beside him, the reigning Ballon d'Or winner, the captain who had lifted the World Cup 4 months earlier, and said 6 words that would echo across the next 20 years of football. The final whistle blew and the Bernabeu celebrated. 2-0, 3 points. Capello's plan had worked on the scoreboard at least, but in the tunnel, a different conversation was happening. Roberto Carlos walked off the pitch with a broken finger, a bruised ego, and the look of a man who had just encountered something he couldn't explain. Beside him was Fabio Cannavaro, the man who had stared down Zidane in a World Cup final, who had neutralized Henry across 120 minutes in Berlin, who was weeks away from being named the best player on earth. And Roberto Carlos turned to him and said, "My God, who is this player? He's the new Maradona." That's what made the words so powerful. This wasn't a defeated man offering excuses. This was a winner, a man walking off a pitch his team had just dominated on the scoreboard, admitting freely that the best player he'd ever faced was a 19-year-old on the losing side. But Roberto Carlos didn't stop there. What he said next was less a compliment and more a warning aimed at every defender who would come after him. "I'm lucky. I don't have much time left before I retire. How will the next generation of defenders cope? They'll really struggle with him. I knew he'd be the best player in the world. In the future, he would win everything." Roberto Carlos left Real Madrid at the end of that season. He'd played his final El Clasico, and the last image he carried from the fixture that defined his career wasn't a trophy lift or a famous free kick. It was a broken finger and the memory of a 19-year-old who made him feel helpless. Cannavaro stayed, won 2 La Liga titles with Real Madrid, collected his Ballon d'Or 1 month later, continued to be recognized as one of the finest defenders of his generation. But neither man ever forgot October 22nd, 2006. The night they met the future, and the future didn't care about their past. 5 months later, 10th March 2007, the return fixture, Camp Nou. Same defenders, same teenager, same number 19 shirt. But this time, Barcelona were at home, and this time, Messi wasn't going to let finishing let him down. Van Nistelrooy opened the scoring for Madrid, just like the Bernabeu, just like last time. Real Madrid in front, comfortable, Capello's system working, and then Messi happened. He equalized in the 11th minute. Van Nistelrooy scored again. Messi equalized again in the 19th minute. Sergio Ramos put Madrid ahead for a third time in the 73rd minute. And in the 88th minute, with the game slipping away, with Real Madrid 2 minutes from victory, Messi picked up the ball on the edge of the box, danced past 2 defenders, and curled a left-footed shot into the bottom corner. 3-3, hat-trick. The youngest player to ever score 3 goals in El Clasico. 3 equalizers. 3 times Real Madrid took the lead. 3 times a 19-year-old dragged Barcelona back from the dead. Every goal was more audacious than the last. Every finish more composed than a teenager had any right to deliver. The performance at the Bernabeu 5 months earlier had been the warning. This was the confirmation. The night Roberto Carlos told Cannavaro about was no longer a prophecy, it was reality. Messi didn't score. His team lost 2-0. The highlights don't feature his name on the score sheet. If you only looked at the result, you'd think nothing remarkable happened. But that night became known as the night 2 World Cup winners met the future of football, and he left one of them with a scar he still shows the world, smiling 2 decades later. Messi didn't score, Barcelona didn't win, but Roberto Carlos walked off with a broken finger he still shows on camera 2 decades later, laughing, calling it a souvenir. And Cannavaro, the best defender alive, walked off knowing he'd abandoned his post to help a teammate who couldn't cope, and it still wasn't enough. 5 months later, Messi scored a hat-trick against the same defense. Then, he spent the next 15 years doing it to everyone else.